Hello, welcome everyone to another episode of the Golden Grotto Lounge, a podcast where Bond aficionados can engage in lively discussion. And I'm joined today by Jon Burn from the lovely UK. He runs the blog Not Perfected Yet, which is also his Twitter handle. And Jon has a Bachelor of Arts degree in film studies, enjoys film criticism and psychoanalysis. That is interesting. Jon, tell me about that.
Well, it all came from when I was at university. Everything in terms of studying film was, there's so much in there. Some of it is history, some of it is literally the mechanics and the technology with it. Some of it is the economics, but I always found it a lot more interesting to kind of look at the way characters are portrayed, relationships, and you find so much more of depth within the characters when you look at them from a much more psychological point of view.
Yeah, and that is sort of my topic for tonight. I want to analyze some of the characters, especially the villains, in relation to the girls, because much talk is made about Bond and his girls and the relationship between Bond and the various Bond girls, but nobody ever goes into the depths of what is the villain's relationship to the girls. And you wrote a wonderful article. We will come to that later. It's called He Only Loves Gold, about the perversion that you find in Goldfinger. I found that a fascinating article. It was published on License to Queer, and I will link it in the description if you want to read it. So Jon, first off, how would you psychoanalyze Bond? Is that even possible? James Bond as a character? Is he in need of a good psychiatrist?
Oh, I think he definitely would be. If just going from the reports that Silver has on all his failed tests, it tells you just exactly what kind of damaged psyche he has.
Yeah, absolutely. And given the history, especially in the story arc that Daniel Craig had, I think I would send him right off to the next available psychoanalyst. What about the villains? Who do you think is the number one villain that needs treatment right away?
Well, they're all varying degrees of either being evil or purely insane. I'd say someone who's, for example, Max Zorin, that's someone who's clearly mentally deranged, even though it was kind of partly due to the science experiments that were performed on him when he was in the womb. But that's just not just evil, that is pure insanity in Zorin. You could see it in his eyes, in his laugh, everything about him.
Absolutely. And his relationship to Mayday, which sort of opens up my topic, the relationship between a villain and a Bond girl or a femme fatale. Mayday I would classify as a femme fatale. You would probably as well?
I would as well, yes, definitely. I mean, she's clearly the hench person of her film, clearly more so than any of the others. I mean, you have Scarpine, you have Jenny, you have Panho, but none of them are really as striking and as important and involved as Mayday is.
And they have a strange relationship, those two, Max Zorin and Mayday.
Yeah, I mean,
would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, at first we're led to believe that it is romantic. I mean, the scene where they're sparring with each other and there is that kind of energy between them that is definitely sexual, but there's definitely a hesitation from Mayday. I think that's more because she's someone who likes being in control.
Yeah, and especially in this scene, I think when she acted so angry, she was not in control at that moment when he overpowers her and he has her on the ground and the phone call interrupts and she's really angry. And I think this is sort of a game of domination.
Absolutely. I mean, when the phone rings, she instantly goes from being angry to looking quite disappointed.
Absolutely. I got not harassed, but somebody said, how can you compare these two things? I always try to compare things, and this scene between Max Zorin and Mayday when he overpowers her and he's on top of her and she clearly doesn't like it, it feels a lot like the scene in Goldfinger in the barn where Bond forces himself on Pussy Galore. Would you say this is a comparison you can make, or are these two completely different things?
I think it'd be similar but different. I mean, at this point, you can clearly tell that Zorin and Mayday are in a relationship. They are consenting adults. Whereas in Goldfinger, Pussy is much more resistant to Bond at that time. She doesn't want to fall for his charms. And she is trying to resist him, but ultimately she does want him.
Are you more on the side of those fans who say this is a rape kind of situation in Goldfinger, or completely the opposite?
I don't think it's a rape situation. I mean, we could always bring up the idea that it was the 60s, times were different. There was attitudes between sex and politics completely different to what we have now. You look at it now, and it does not look good at all. But I don't think it makes Bond as a rapist when he's supposed to be our hero.
Yeah. And Pussy Galore, a lesbian?
Yes, well, it's very heavily implied in the film, isn't it? I mean, it's absolutely confirmed in the novel, but their relationship is also incredibly different in the novel. They spend very little time together, and she just seems to go with him at the end just because she seems to be the only woman left.
And she not only rejects Bond at first, she rejects Goldfinger as well. I mean, in this scene in his Kentucky estate, where he touches her hand and stuff, she outright rejects him.
Yeah, in a very, very delicate way, she does that as well, just to show that she's not interested at all. I mean, the beautiful timing of when she mentions about hanging up the "keep out" sign as she's drawing her hand away. But also, there's to note there that Goldfinger only starts to show an interest in her in a kind of a sexual or romantic way once he mentions that she is about to become a very rich woman, because that is really the only thing that attracts him.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where your article comes in. He only loves gold. Goldfinger really only loves gold.
Hey, he flat out says it to Bond. Everything about it. It's color. It's divine heaviness.
Is this person actually in the mindset of having a relationship with a woman?
I don't think he is at all. To the novel as well, there's mention that Goldfinger hires women for sex, but he has them painted gold beforehand, and that is dehumanizing them completely. So he just sees them as an object of gold instead of as a person and a woman. And also the fact that he's paying for this service it's an ownership and it's a control.
So in the film, the portrayal is a little different, I think, and the only woman painted in gold is Jill, for, I think, a totally different reason. And you wrote it in your article. It's basically a situation, if I can't have her, Bond should not have her. So I paint her in gold and she dies.
Absolutely. And the symbol of her being painted gold of all colors, it's again, that ownership of him. He's sending a message to Bond saying, this is what I've done because you've interfered in my business and you've got this girl killed and this is all your fault, but I'm going to own her now because now she is literally just gold.
So object sexuality is a theme in Goldfinger at that point. Goldfinger only loving gold. Are there other examples in the Bond films or the Bond novels of object sexuality?
I can't think of anything as striking as Goldfinger. All villains have their different motivations to have their different attitudes towards women. Like, take Drax, for example. He just seems to hoard women around him, but this is all for his plan of repopulating the human race down the line. So he is always surrounded by a pair of beautiful women whenever he meets Bond. And they're all of high class and structure. They all have titles and everything. But he keeps them because he needs them. But he doesn't seem involved whatsoever in wanting to repopulate the human race himself. He has everyone else to do this for him. He's literally, as a god figure, just going to stand over it and watch it all happen in outer space.
I always thought that Scaramanga had a really very big soft spot for his gun, almost using it as a sex toy in bed with Andrea Anders. This is a scene that looks very uncomfortable in a relationship between villain and girl when he touches her with a golden gun. Feels very uncomfortable, and she's very uncomfortable in that scene, isn't she?
Yeah, that relationship is very progressive for the 70s and the PG era of Bond, and especially the Moore films, because that is literally a man controlling a woman who has no choice what to do. At first, she seems quite content. She has plenty of jewelry. She goes off, does her own thing here or there. She doesn't look like she's a prisoner. It's only later on when she tells Bond that there's no escaping him whatsoever and that she is his, that you realise just how much this woman is suffering at his hands. And he does control her completely.
Yeah, and I think the only thing he can offer her is being rich. I mean, that is established from the opening of the film, where they are on the island, on the beach. The only thing Scaramanga can offer her is lying in the sunshine, not to worry about anything. That's basically it. There's not much more.
Well, I think there's one other thing that he can offer her, and that is staying alive. Because you know that he would kill her if she ever tried to leave him.
Yeah, which in the end she does.
Well, certainly tried.
She betrays him.
She betrays him, yes. And when he realizes he does exactly what he would have done had she just upped and left the island one day and never came back, he would have found her.
Yeah. What would you say? What relationship between a villain and a Bond lady on screen, being it femme fatale or not, or later leaning towards Bond, is the most interesting?
Well, certainly one interesting aspect I have is in GoldenEye, when you have Alec Trevelyan and you have Xenia Onatopp, because that's really the only relationship that I see where there is no kind of sexual tension, anything like this. It is all business. He looks at her as a colleague and an employee. He's aware of the fact that she has various kinks in terms of how she dispatches people. But at no point do you ever see any kind of hint of them having a romantic past or anything like that. They literally just are like two employees working in a corporation together, which is quite odd, because you see Trevelyan really tries to outdo Bond as much as he can do. And you'd think that he would take advantage of that. I mean, he tries it with Natalia instantly because he thinks Bond has had Natalia, and that's the only reason why he really wants her.
I think I actually found a very, very small sign, but it can be nothing. In the train in GoldenEye, when Xenia comes in and Trevelyan is sitting down, she walks towards the camera and for a short moment strikes his shoulder with her hand, almost like a very soft touch. And I thought, okay, that's a tiny bit intimate. Might there be something? Might there be more than just colleagues? You don't know.
It is a tiny bit intimate, but it's also, I know exactly the moment you're thinking of, and it just seems a little bit kind of reassuring. Because those two have been working together for a few years. But Oromov, he's very much kind of an outsider to this. He doesn't know Trevelyan's history as a Liance Cossack. He only knows what he needs to know. Whereas the actual people within Janus, because we only get to see Trevelyan and Xenia running the Janus group, because Oromov, again, is the outsider. Boris is an outsider because he's been paid off to betray his country. You don't see anyone else that actually is part of the high-ranking crime organization. So it makes you wonder if it is just the two of them.
You mentioned Natalia. She rejects Trevelyan as well. So the theme of rejection is also very big in a villain's world. A lot of villains get rejected. Alec Trevelyan being one of them. Goldfinger, we mentioned. He gets rejected by Pussy Galore. Who else is there? Domino. She rejects Largo. She doesn't really want to be with him. I think she feels very uncomfortable. He's violent towards her when he finds out that she had something going on with Bond. But I think right in the dance scene in Thunderball in the casino, when she says to Bond, "The way you hold me is different," you know that she does not like to be in Largo's company.
Yeah, you get this feeling that she's slowly realizing that she is a kept woman and a prisoner of Largo. Domino can be quite interesting because you've got the three different interpretations of it. You've got the original book, you've got Thunderball, then you've also got Kim Basinger in Never Say Never Again. And in Never Say Never Again, it's very, very different because she seems to really be in love with Largo. And he seems to be mostly pleasant. And it's only much later on that she really sours on him and turns on him. Everything beforehand, she really acts like not a kept woman, but a woman that's genuinely in love with the man.
Yeah. And that scene in Never Say Never Again, when they enter the villa and she holds that statue and he kisses her and then turns into this insane person, brilliantly acted by Brandauer. And I always found that scene very, very striking. I'd say.
It is. It's
And I think that was
it's
the
it's great
moment.
acting from Basing as well, because she is trembling and she is
Yeah.
terrified of him by this point.
Yeah. So I think there are categories. There's rejection, kept women, slaves even. I mean, Solitaire, good example. Severine. I would even say Bibi Dahl. And she later says, I know exactly what you want. She says it to Christatos. So there is something that we're supposed to see and know, that he probably likes younger women, not only having them as ice skaters, probably. And do we have another category of women?
Well, we have basically the evil, like the femme fatales. So you have your Xenias, you have Fiona
Volpes,
Volpes,
Fiona,
yeah.
of course. Yeah.
They're normally highly sexualized women as well. They're very, very strong and can be quite dominant, and especially forward with Bond as well.
How would you rate Electra King? Villain or Bond girl or ally?
I always think of Electra King as the main villain of The World Is Not Enough, and Renard is her henchman. It's just what I say. The henchman normally is someone who has a kind of unique strength or a kind of a near superpower, which Renard has with his strength and his inability to feel pain. And she is the mastermind. I mean, a lot of people don't catch it in the dialogue that she's the one that turns him while she's kidnapped. She's just taken this opportunity to use him to eliminate her father and take control. It's easily missed, but Electra King is the main villain. I mean, she gets to be the Bond girl as well. Obviously not the final Bond girl, but she is the complete package and being very complex as well.
Yeah, and a lot of people say, how can you classify Christmas Jones as the main Bond girl when clearly Electra King has much more screen time and is much more prominent in the film and better acted, some would say. But the main Bond girl for me is mainly the one that ends up with Bond at the end somehow and isn't dead.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Electra King ends up dead. Yeah. But I think Electra King, for me, she's also the villain of the film. I mean, she uses Renard like so many villains use their henchmen for something. And they don't really care if they perish in the process. And I think Electra is exactly that. I had this on episode 3 with my guest Joao, where we delved into the mythology of Bond, and the Electra myth, of course, comes from Greek mythology, where they turned it around, where she wanted to save her father, and in The World Is Not Enough, she kills him. So, perfect villain for me. Now, what about Safin? No Time to Die.
Safin is a bit of an enigma. You can very much tell from the final film that there has been stuff that was originally written that is not there. I mean, there is his fascination with Madeleine Swan. I don't think the film properly fleshes it out, but I think we're supposed to draw from the fact that when he saved her as a child, he became infatuated with her in some way.
He makes the decision to save her instead of letting her drown on the ice.
Yeah, and we never really get that clarified as to why he did that.
No,
it's never explained.
No, that's true.
No, I mean, he literally took the idea of like, well, you killed my family, I will kill your family. But then again, he just doesn't at the end of the moment. But it's not like he's incapable of killing, because he's planning on killing hundreds of thousands of people.
I mean, probably he didn't see her as a target. It's that I kill your family, but I mean, that goes for Mr. White and his wife, but maybe not the child. And I mean, he, in the later part of the film where young Mathilde bites his hand, I mean, everybody would freak out, and he just says, well, it's okay, you're under my protection, that's all fine. Totally different from what I would think he would react.
Yes, but think that he really wanted to be the parent. He wanted Mathilde to be his child. He wanted Madeleine to be his woman. But we never really get the depth of it there.
Yeah. I had the feeling it is sort of an obsessive, possessive relationship that Safin has towards Madeleine. He wants to possess her in some kind, and in that, he is in a line with a lot of villains who try to possess women, I think.
Oh, clearly. I mean, his solution of keeping the nanobots that are specially targeted for her, that's a pure case of like, well, if I can't have her, then no one will. And
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
just the fact he uses that in a last ditch effort. It's the fact he's gone to the trouble of making that, so he intends to use it at some point or another.
Did you like No Time to Die when you saw it for the first time?
When I saw it for the first time, I enjoyed it. I think it has third act problems, though. There's again, like I said with Safin, there's a lot of things going on in the third act that I don't know why they're happening, and for me, it kind of falls apart after Cuba. But everything before then, I really did quite enjoy.
Me too. I have always said it's not the story I want to see on screen, but well, it turned out that way. And when you watch it a second time and a third time, for me, it doesn't change. People say it gets better when you watch it a second time, a third time. Did it happen to you? Did it change in any way? Did your feelings change towards the film?
I don't think my feelings have changed towards the film too much. Again, I just saw more holes in it. I think the thing is, and I pretty much felt this from the get-go when I'm first seeing it, is it doesn't have a huge amount of rewatch value for me because I'm not going to invest 3 hours to sit there and have an incredibly sad ending. I mean, it's not like an ending where it's on a Majesty's Secret Service, because next is Diamonds Are Forever and Bond's going to go after Blofeld. It's not exactly the same continuation. But to invest in the film for 3 hours to watch the hero that you've loved for your entire life die, it's not something you're just going to put on as a comfort watch.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Good that you mentioned Diamonds Are Forever. A scene that I always found ridiculously funny was Blofeld appearing as a trans woman in the car. Do you think that that was a bit too much, or does it fit the tone of the film, being as camp as it is?
The tone of the film perfectly. It makes no sense whatsoever, the entire scene, because no one knows he's there. No one would recognize him walking through. Tiffany shouldn't see a cat and wonder, oh, I should follow them, because she has no idea about Blofeld at all, or the fact that he even has a cat. The whole thing is absolutely ludicrous, and I think that's why it works.
It was very advanced for its time, the film, with Wint and Kid being a gay couple in a film. I think before that, such references to homosexuality were not so prominently featured, I think, in the films.
No, it is a very progressive portrayal. Granted, some people will say, yes, but you've got a homosexual couple who are the villains. But the thing is, this film doesn't portray them as being evil because they're homosexual. They're evil because they're criminals.
No.
Their sexuality has nothing to do with it. And in fact, there's absolutely delightful moments with the two of them just looking at each other, nodding, holding hands. There's one bit I've always loved, I think is great, is when Tiffany Case gets on the plane and you've got that exchange between Wint and the Kid. It's like, oh, she seems quite attractive for a lady. And the way Bruce Glover just turns and glares at Peter Smith, it's just fantastic. It just really makes them real as a couple. They're having a little spat.
Yeah. I really also enjoy these scenes a lot. I think it was very well written. It fits, of course, the campiness of the film itself, but I thought much more could have been done with it in terms of, well, making them better henchmen, maybe in a more dramatic setting, which, of course, Diamonds Are Forever wasn't. It wasn't that dramatic. Never appealed to me as being dramatic. Just funny and camp.
Yeah, well, the Vegas setting.
Where does it rank on your list?
Diamonds Are Forever is quite high. It was one of the first ones I saw, so I've always really enjoyed it. And I like Las Vegas a lot as well. So the setting for me is just great. And it's been nice over the years to go there and visit some of the old sites that are still there anyway. So yeah, Diamonds Are Forever, I always put it on and will always enjoy it.
Since you're an expert in film studies, I would think that you know about composition of images, framing, the use of various techniques, shadows, zooms, camera techniques. What would you say, which villain was best captured on film for the Bond films?
The first thing that springs to mind is Dr. No, because that's fantastic to keep a portrayal of someone without actually showing them right up until the last few minutes of the film. So you've got the scene where Dent comes and gets the tarantula, and it's beautiful Ken Adams set with the lighting and everything. And Joseph Wiseman's just monotone voice, just narrating through it. It's creepy, it's eerie, and he really stands out without even being seen. And I've always just thought that was a really good
Exactly, yeah.
portrayal.
Yeah, he's like a myth. He's like a myth. He's just his voice is there, and he appears almost at the very end. Yeah, very little screen time. I always thought Goldfinger was very well cast with Gerd Fröbe, and although his voice was dubbed by Michael Collins, he did it down to a T, because Gerd Fröbe had a very specific voice, and I think that was perfect casting. Is there somebody you would say was miscast as a villain?
Ooh, miscast as a villain. That's an interesting one. I'm not sure if totally miscast. I will think. No, I'm trying to think now if there has been any really terrible. I mean, Mathieu Merrick as Dominic Green comes to mind, but I don't think that's so much a miscast. I think that's more down to the character not being very much and not having much for him to do with it.
Yeah. Well, let's go for poorly written.
Poorly written, I would say Safin. I would say Dominic Green. Yeah, those two definitely.
Dominic Green, exactly the same. When I did my quiz show on YouTube, and there was a picture that they had to put together with just 6 snippets of an image. It was that one where Dominic Green is stamping wildly, and Elvis comes in and says, "Somebody's here to see you," and Camille walks in. And I always thought, what is he doing in this dockyard? He has a few stamps there, and he's stamping around. What is he actually doing? Is this his business? And a friend from France said, well, that makes him evil. He does very little, but later he might do something really crazy. Zorin sometimes appears as normal compared to people that run around in our real world, and later they turn into complete idiots. I don't know, but Green is very weak to me. I think Green is a very weak villain. I'm not afraid of him. That is the first thing.
No. You know he's not going to be a physical match for Bond either, which I am actually kind of impressed by their final fight with the axe. When he literally got over him.
That's
that
true.
Was surprising.
Yeah, and he was fierce. Yeah. He was really fierce. But of course, as you say, no physical presence whatsoever.
No, he just comes across as like a creepy banker.
Yeah, exactly. With big eyes. Yeah. Creepy. Yeah. Creepiest villains?
Creepiest villains.
What is your creepiest villain? Who would you not want to be in a room with?
Oh, Jaws in the first 20 minutes of The Spy Who Loved Me. Before he drops the rock on his foot, Jaws is terrifying at that point.
Yeah, that's true. Just because of his height.
It's everything. The eyes as well. There's a lot of like, kind of dead-eyed look he has early on, especially when he's when he kills Fakesh at the pyramids. Yeah, I think that's a lot of the lighting, blacks out his eyes completely.
That was a scene that was very well done from the camera work when he kills Fakesh. I thought that was really
camera work, lighting, music, everything.
Also in Moonraker, when Jaws appears during the carnival, I thought that was also really well done. You can't see him in the crowd. You see this really huge costume, and then the camera reveals more, and Bond doesn't really know what it is, and then this weird costume.
It is very ominous the way he just walks down the alleyway just by himself, and you have the carnival in the background, and it just that walk seems to go on forever as well.
That's really, really well made. I think Baron Samedi does it for me. As a child, I found it odd and funny. I found Baron Samedi really, really funny. But today, I thought I've read much about voodoo and stuff and what really exists on some of the islands in the Caribbean. And I thought, ooh, that's eerie. Baron Samedi is really eerie. And he appears at the end of the film. So he's not dead. Where is he?
Yeah. Baron Samedi is very creepy. Also, there's a kind of fear of the unknown with Baron Samedi. I think that was what they were aiming with the audience as well. Like you said, you've read up on voodoo now, so you know more about it, so it makes more sense. But there's a lot of Live and Let Die that it's using otherness, be it the spiritual religions with voodoo or just race. Otherness is supposed to be scary. Bond is supposed to be intimidated by what is different.
And many of the villains have deformities. But to automatically say, which is of course a wrong thing, that they are evil.
Yeah, it's as I said with Winton Kid. Just because they're scarred doesn't mean they're evil. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
But it's
Mm.
just a way of visualizing it very quickly. I don't think
Mm.
anyone is going to go see a film and see a villain that has a facial scar and then assume that they see someone with a facial scar in real life and think that they're evil.
It often happens. You think, something's not right with that person. But then you should think something's not right with me. Isn't that the road to psychoanalysis?
It is, yes.
Good. So I did myself therapy there. But somebody recently said to me, I was watching something. I was watching this. It was about Gorbachev, and Gorbachev, of course, had a bald head, and he had this mark on his head. And somebody said to me, "Oh, he's probably an evil Russian politician." I said, "Why do you say he's evil?" Yeah, I mean, look at him. He's got this mark on his head. It looks like a Bond villain. Okay, interesting. So this connection is automatically made by a lot of people, which is so totally wrong. Could be a totally nice guy.
Yeah, I mean,
Gorbachev. I didn't know him.
did quite a lot for Glasnost and trying to like create relations with the West. So, but it's funny you should say that. It's went to evil Russian politician, to which not just in James Bond films, but in spy films. The Russians through the Cold War were the enemy. So you would assume that Russian, therefore evil. But the one thing that the Bond films always did is their Russian villains don't represent Russia. They've all defected away. They've either gone to Spectre, they've gone into business for themselves. They are not acting as villains on behalf of Russia in the Bond films, which is a very interesting point.
Which brings me to Rosa Klebb. Also, I think, which transpires from the book a little bit and certainly from the film version, she's also a bit of a lesbian, isn't she?
That is putting it mildly. I think Rosa Klebb, much like Goldfinger, is quite a perverse character as well, because it's not just it's a sexual attraction, it's power and it's mind games. When she's like meeting for the first time with Tanya, and she is exuding absolute control over her, saying that she won't leave the room alive if she refuses, she will be shot, but also at the same time caressing her and complimenting her looks, asking about her sexual history. It's like that is a really uncomfortable sense of control that she's setting out over her from day one of that mission.
Control is a very, very big topic when it comes to villain, the control they have and when they lose it. I just, this afternoon, I read the torture scene of Casino Royale, Fleming, with a student of mine. It was very interesting because he saw the film and he had a clear image of the film in front of his head, and he said, "That wasn't like that in the film." I said, "No, it's totally different." And he said, "I think I like the film more." I said, "Oh, that's interesting. Why is that?" "Yeah, in the book it's too long, but it's a brilliant chapter in the book, I think, this torture scene."
Oh, yeah.
Where a villain thinks he has total control, and the villain, and I think Fleming wrote it well because Le Chiffre is the only one who's speaking. Bond is not able to speak. And he has control in that moment until suddenly he loses it. And Fleming wrote that brilliantly.
Yeah, in the book, I definitely do think that Le Chiffre shows a lot more control. If you compare it to Mads Mikkelsen's performance, that's a man who is rapidly losing control. You can see it in his disheveled look, the amount of sweat going on. He's panicking, and he knows he's in trouble, and he's trying his best to get this fixed as quick as he can do. So he does have complete dominance over Bond, but you can see he is just as frightened for his own life as Bond is for his.
Do you have a character from one of the Bond novels that has not yet been on the screen that you would say, "Oh, I would really love that person portrayed on the screen"?
I would love to see Gala Brand for Moonraker.
That was my thought.
Yeah, fantastic character. The way she works with Bond is great. Their relationship develops very well. Also, the end of their relationship, I won't bring up the details of it for anyone who hasn't read Moonraker yet, because you really should. But it's a great great relationship that she has with Bond, and it has a very satisfying ending to it.
But what is the great thing about Moonraker? If people want to decide to read Moonraker, why would you say this is one of the best Flemings to read?
It's very engaging straight away. You've got this whole mystery of Drax, and you have the murder mystery that Bond's sent to investigate from the two employees. One killed the man in the pub and then committed suicide. And you don't know what this is all about, and you don't know what Drax's plan is right up until the beginning of the third act, where everything gets revealed. But before then, it's a really engrossing mystery. And the first act with Blades and the card game of Bond literally drugging himself and then feigning that he's a bad player so he can defeat Drax after discovering how he's cheating. It's a fantastic sequence. It's some of Fleming's best writing.
Yeah, and some people say it's a bleak novel. Because it's completely in the UK, I think. I seem to remember.
It is, yeah. It's completely
it's set in the UK, and the plot is slowly developing.
Yeah, like I said, it works as a mystery.
I found it to be, but I really loved it. And Gala Brand would have been my choice as well. It almost made it to the screen, Gala Brand.
I think they were originally going to do that and Die Another Day, and Rosamund Pike's character would have originally been Gala Brand, but then they decided not to do that because what they were going to do with the character.
I think she's a fantastic character as well, Miranda Frost.
Miranda Frost is good. I think she deserves a better film.
Yeah.
But Rosamund Pike's a fantastic actress anyway, and even at that very early stage of her career, she gives a very good, memorable portrayal, and she has very good chemistry with Pierce Brosnan there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And as much as many fans hate that film for mainly the CGI and the kite surfing thing, but I think from the costumes and the setting, especially the Ice Palace scenes where, for me, it's that typical dress up scene. Everybody dresses up. And what was the casino in the 60s was the Ice Palace in Die Another Day. So it was another lush place to meet, although it had a cold vibe. But her dress, and the dress of Jinx, superb costume design, I thought.
Yeah, and they play off against really each other as well. Her with the very, very cold look and Jinx with the very warm look to them.
Yeah, and this whole lushness of the films. Let's take the grand casinos and the ballrooms and wherever these films were set. Isn't that in itself a kind of perverse world that Bond enters every time he goes on a mission, every time he needs to dig out a villain in a casino, because it is a world of money. The villains have money. They are so rich beyond belief. Isn't that in itself a very perverse world?
Absolutely, yeah. It's not just money. It's all kinds of vices there. There's alcohol, tobacco, all these women beautifully dressed. There's seduction in it. It is kind of a lurid setting it could be, but it's cleverly presented as very high class, very elegant at the same time.
Yeah. Where would you rank Tracy DiVincenzo as Bond's wife and the road leading up to it?
Very high, very high. Absolute classic Bond girl. Fantastic portrayal by Diana Rigg. Really brought something a little bit more to the character. Tracy in the book is much less strong than she is here. She has a lot more to do, actually being involved in going to Piz Gloria as well. But Tracy's backstory is tragic. It's far more tragic in the book. And because of that, she really, really can't seem to go on with life, so to speak. But Diana Rigg, you see her change. It's after the montage with her and James, and you see them basically falling in love with each other. She is a much happier person, and she becomes much stronger and is able to help him. And everything she does in terms of saving his life countless times is exactly what you'd expect of a woman that Bond decides he wants to marry.
Yeah. And she rejects Blofeld as well, and another villain getting rejected when he says, I can make you a countess. And she says, I'm already a countess. What do you want? Go away.
Yeah, it's a very flirtatious scene while she's doing it as well. She seems like, make me another offer. Try harder. Then when she realizes that that James and Draco are on their way, then she starts playing up to Blofeld exactly how he expected his advances to be taken, and she uses
which
her
is also
feminine wiles.
which is also, I think, a game of dominance. I mean, playing back and forth on each other, make me a better offer, as you say, but she is receptive. She would say, okay, if I have a better offer, maybe. I think brilliantly played by Diana Rigg. I mean, she was a great actress. She was a fantastic actress. Could there have been more made out of that before she died in the film? Because I remember in the book there was at least they made it to Austria on their honeymoon, going through Munich, I think. Or would this have overloaded the film?
I think it would have overloaded the film. I think it's much more tragic to happen literally 5 minutes from leaving the wedding than giving it enough time for them to drive a little bit way through Europe. Yeah, it just hammers home the tragedy of it a lot more.
Now, going back to psychoanalysis and Blofeld. Let's take Blofeld, for example. Where would you start to try to correct a character like Blofeld, to help this character, if this person came to you for help and said, I have serious issues?
Well, I think it all depends on exactly which interpretation of Blofeld we're going to go with. I mean, you look at Christoph Waltz, and the man would definitely need some sort of therapy in terms of his father issues. He's clearly been warped by a sense of rejection that doesn't appear to be there. I mean, you get the feeling that his father, being the ski instructor and the mountain climber, got on more with James than he did with Blofeld, because he was an adventurous child, and that's what made him the surrogate son. And it was the jealousy that Franz Oberhauser has from that creates this idea in his head that his dad is rejecting him and James is pushing him out of his family, so he might as well kill his family.
Yeah, and if you go for the portrayal of Blofeld, let's say Telly Savalas.
Telly Savalas, I've always looked at him as Blofeld as he's a megalomaniac. It is absolute control and power. Obviously he wants his title to be recognized. He just wants the slate wiped clean, but he wants as much power and wealth as he can get with one last job to pull it off.
What politician would you compare Blofeld to? Past or present?
Ooh, that's a very, very tricky question. So I try to stay out of politics as much as possible. I mean, I don't want to say Vladimir Putin in case something might happen to me. I don't want polonium in my mobile phone or anything like that. But there is definitely, let's say, some parallels between Donald Pleasance's Blofeld and the certain Russian leader right now.
Yeah, I would say so too. I would I would consider. If they didn't cast Christopher Walken as Max Zorin, they could have also taken Donald Trump. But Donald Trump is much more of a comical character because he's not insane. He's just plain weird. But as you said in the beginning, Max Zorin is really insane. I think it's very hard to find an actual person who is like Max Zorin. They are probably around, but...
Oh, no, because he's a sociopath and a psychopath.
Yeah.
The way he
absolutely.
He just gives up Mayday straight away, no hesitation, and it makes you wonder: was that always the plan? Because Mayday's by his side, and he only sends her off to chase down Bond and Stacy. So you would imagine that she would have still been with him when he set off the explosives, but no, because she's gone, it's like, well, I'm just going to write her off. It's very weird actually, because he surrounds himself with these beautiful women that are in his employ. And he ends up murdering them, and then he has this kind of going off into the sunset moment with Scarpine all of a sudden, and Scarpine and his surrogate dad are going to run away and live together. And it just feels like a very bizarre family unit.
Yeah, definitely. I always liked the moment when... Well, I didn't like the moment when Mayday blows up, but her face drops right before that whole thing explodes.
Yeah.
She looks at Zorin and she realizes, well, that's it. And her face drops. I think that is very interesting, always. And I found that really well played.
Yeah.
As difficult as she was, probably, to work with. But she did a really great job, Grace Jones. Do you have a favorite Bond film?
I love Goldeneye.
I know
I
you.
absolutely
I know
love
you have a
Goldeneye.
favorite Bond girl.
Yeah, that's true.
If it's still true, if the ranking is still true, it should be Octopussy.
It is. Octopussy is a fantastic character.
Because she's of course a businesswoman. Yeah,
She's a businesswoman, circus performer, economically viable.
She's jack of all trades.
Yeah, absolutely. She's been running like several businesses for years, off of the stolen gold that her father took.
Yeah,
but yeah, successful,
and she's very smart,
incredibly smart. And she makes a fantastic pairing with Roger Moore. Maud Adams and Roger Moore had amazing chemistry with each other. I think more so in Octopussy than in The Man with the Golden Gun.
Yeah. Okay, so favorite film?
Definitely Goldeneye. Goldeneye will always have a special place in my heart because it just relaunched Bond at a time when that came out. I was in my teenage years, so you wanted to see something new and fresh happen with Bond, especially after the 6-year gap. So it was like everything just changing gears and ramping up. And I think they dealt with not having the Cold War to lay on incredibly well, while still keeping it very much like a Cold War thriller. You have one of the best selections of villains in there. Every villain is great in one way or another. And Natalia, I think, is one of the best Bond girls as well. She's very capable, competent. I think she's very well played. She's also very down to earth. She's probably the most realistic of all the Bond girls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was GoldenEye the first one you've seen?
No.
In cinema?
No, I saw The Living Daylights in the cinema. That was my first Bond in the cinema.
Was that the one that turned you into a fan right away?
No, I had seen, at this point, I can't remember exactly what was the first one I saw. I'd definitely seen Diamonds Are Forever and For Your Eyes Only beforehand. I just don't remember which one I saw first, but those were the first two I saw.
Okay. And your blog, Not Perfected Yet, as I said in the description, you mentioned on Twitter you've run out of ideas about Bond.
I wouldn't say I've run out.
Are they coming back?
Oh, of course they are. Yeah, it's one can't always throw out everything. I mean, some people say other things that need to be said, and it's not a question of running out of ideas. It's like, what do I have to say and offer that is new, fresh, and relevant that people would want to hear? I'm always chatting with people on social media, giving out my opinions, but I want to really, give people something to make worthwhile their time of reading, something that really does kind of give a new voice or a new spin to something Bond related, which I'll always keep doing.
I love reading your blog. I can highly recommend it to everyone. So the link is in the description. If you want to check out Jon's blog, Not Perfected Yet, check out the blog. Some great stories. The latest one is the review of Argyle, I think. Was it as bad as some critics say?
Oh, well, I've written the review for the book so far. Part 2 will be the film. I'll say it in a nutshell.
Without giving anything away.
It's fun. It's a little too long. Don't get your hopes up for anything serious. If you liked the Kingsman films, you might like this.
Okay, so I might like it.
I don't think it's.
I recently watched Kingsman again. Yeah, I wasn't expecting much substance from it from seeing the trailer, but I mainly go to the cinema for fun and entertainment. Analyzing comes much later. Much later.
Exactly.
There are so many things in the Bond films. Yeah, absolutely. Like Roger Moore said, 2 hours of fun and entertainment. That's what you pay to go to the cinema for, And really analyzing comes at home when I have time, when I can rewind and pause and stuff. But I had the same problem last year. What should I do? What kind of content should I do with Bond? And at what point has everything been talked about?
Exactly.
I found that really, really difficult. And you just do it in a different way, and you don't want to copy off someone else. When they found out something, you don't want to build on it. But I'm really not good in finding many things myself. That's why I went into this villain girl thing, trying to explore that as fast as I can. Somebody else has probably done it already. But just highlighting what I found. And maybe there are a few odd pieces that people have not seen. But it was really great getting your insight on that, especially from a psychoanalytic point of view. So thank you, Jon, for joining me in the Golden Grotto. I hope it was fun for you as well.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
No, thank you. So, people, like and subscribe. If you like the Golden Grotto, like and subscribe to the Bond Bulletin. Click the link below to go to Not Perfected Yet. And otherwise, I wish you a good night and hope to see you next week. Then it's episode 6, I think. Jon, thank you so much for being with me tonight.
Thank you.